Tottenham Hotspur have appointed Thomas Frank as their new head coach.
And the consistency and the players know the patterns. But of course I'm aware that we need to be flexible sometimes.
You look what Thomas Frank has done over the course of 7 highly successful years, you can understand why Tottenham would be interested.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. This is episode 241. We've got a packed show for you today, a preseason game to talk about. We've got a lot of transfer sagas to cover as well. We'll start by throwing it out to Scott. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what's going on, man?
Chilling, enjoying my Sunday, enjoying the Euros, and enjoyed watching Tottenham Hotspur play football yesterday. It was great.
Yeah, it was a change of pace. We actually have a game to talk about. It's wild. TC is also here. What's up, my man? How was your Sunday?
Sunday's great, brother. Any day that you can talk to your mates after a thrilling preseason victory is it's a good fucking day. Oh, by the way, we're champions of Europe, so there's a win.
That's true. Was it thrilling? Was it a thrilling win? Or were we
As thrilling as a preseason game away at Reading can be. But to be fair, they sold out the place to see us play there, Andrew. So, I mean, it was, for lack of a better term, as vibrant as you would ask for in a preseason setting.
Well, as you said, we are European champions. We are a big draw, of course. Caroline is also here. She's at CG Stefco. Caroline, how's your Sunday?
It's been good so far. I don't think that the friendly was boring at all. You know, I think it says something that immediately after the game, I was looking to see when our next one was, because I'm actually excited to see this team play football. So that's nice and refreshing. It is weird. It is like, you know, first day in school vibes, new teacher. Like there's a lot to learn, a lot to take away from the first press conference, which we're going to do as well. But let's start with the game. And I figured the easiest way to go about this, because look, we're not going to make a big deal, of course, out of a 2-0 victory over Reading, the first preseason match, where you get basically 2 different teams playing in this game. You get a 45 minutes from 2 different 11s. But I figured the best way to kind of go about this would be to go around the room and just point out what's your takeaway? What's one thing you saw in this match that we can draw from and we can talk about for a few minutes. So Scott, let's start with you. You got the number 1 draft pick here. What's your takeaway from this match? What do you want to point out first?
Yeah, the number 1 draft pick usually means I was shit the season prior, so I don't know.
I didn't.
You did lose 22 league matches.
I didn't say it. Okay, I didn't say it, but
you know, honestly, my biggest takeaway is in the middle of the park, and interestingly enough, I thought we looked a little more fluid and just poised, under control, whatever word we want to use, when we switched to more of a single pivot in Basuma than kind of that Bentancur Sarr double pivot that we saw in the first half. So this is the first preseason match of the season, so things are going to change and look very different throughout the next month or whatever. And but ultimately, I've always seen Thomas Frank as being a little bit more successful in a 4-2-3-1, but I thought we looked a little bit better in more of that like 4-1-2-3 that we saw in the second half.
Fair enough. TC, you wanna take us somewhere else? What do you got?
So a couple of things. The first thing is that I saw the kind of fluctuating imbalance in Frank's system, which I thought was really cool, and an opportunity for us to make a significant difference in game will really be the kind of critical game-changing takeaway that I saw from this, is that Thomas Frank, in the way that he had, like in the first half, I want to say he had Destiny doing the majority of the pushing, and then the cutting inside was coming from the left, and Mikey Moore almost that like kind of narrow approach up the channel. And then that was the first half. In the second half, you had Mo Kudus and on the other side, who was the shining star for me in this game. And I'll let you guys bring up the Croatian marvel, but for the time being, for me it was Mo Kudus. I thought that what I saw from him unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, kind of signals the end of Brennan Johnson leading the line on that right hand side for Tottenham.
Fair enough. What you bring up about the lopsided nature, that was going to be my number one draft pick, and I didn't want to highlight Kudus as much as I wanted to highlight Destiny Udogie. I feel like we've never seen him that far up the pitch, and I wonder if it's a matter of him being more comfortable in like the traditional overlapping fullback role versus being an inverted fullback. I'm not sure about that. I think time will tell, but I haven't seen him getting forward more than Porro. We didn't see him more forward than Porro normally
I
was in an
think
Ange system, and this was the first time that was really drastically different.
he has done that for us before in, like, I think what was the Conte system, if I'm not mistaken, where we saw no, it wouldn't have been Conte. It was his first year with us. We saw him in a little bit more of a gallivanting position early, but since he's had the injury concerns, he's been much more focused on his defensive duties than getting forward. So I don't know if it is system, if it is fitness, or if it's a combination of the two. But I think ultimately it's going to pay. Like, if you go back and watch the footage of Destiny Udogie at Udinese, that man was dangerous going forward. So if we can see any of that, it'll be good news for us.
Sure
Well, he was.
enough.
I mean, he was a
Go ahead.
wingback when we bought him out of Udine, right? So I think the profile of being more of your hug the touchline fullback is going to, gallivanting fullback is going to suit him really well. I think that's a great takeaway from yesterday.
Yeah, by no means am I saying Destiny Udogie can't go forward. I just, we haven't seen a lot of it, so that was what stood out to me early in the early going. Especially with the players didn't have their names on their back, just their numbers. So with all the number changes, sometimes I'm a little bit confused, and I've got to take a second and look over. Wait a second, was that who I thought it was? And multiple times that happened with Udogie, where I'm like, wait, he's way up there. Okay, that checks out to me. So it was an interesting.
The club
watch.
didn't make it clear that these are simply preseason numbers and official numbers have not been given.
Which is also why I'm like not trying to get attached to them by any stretch, because I know they're all going to change. Caroline, where do you want to go next? What's your draft pick here?
I think the thing that I really liked about what I saw in this game was the way players were being sort of empowered to play to their best effect. Talking about a player like Udogie, that was a great example, but it really just felt like we had a little bit more control of the game because we were actually using the entire pitch. Players were where they needed to be, but also there was a balance to it. So it didn't feel like sometimes during, the Ange years, we would have, it feel very attacking heavy and the defense not having any sort of impact on the game. And I didn't feel like we saw that. Obviously it's early going, but I liked that. And yeah, I think that kind of allowed some of the players to really shine. I do agree that Udogie was a standout. Kudus looked really great. Who else did we have? And, even Porro, like kind of the opposite of Udogie, he was kind of hanging back a little bit more, but he, I think was able to play well. And we haven't talked about Vuskovic yet, and I feel like we kind of have to.
The draft can move along to me. I'll bring.
Yeah,
up
okay,
Vuskovic.
I'll give it to you. Go ahead, Andrew.
I'll tell you what. Wow, I was shocked at just how kind of bright he looked. Everything that we have learned or knew before about Vuskovic coming in was that maybe he's a little bit on the slower side, but is a good aerial threat. I think we saw a little bit of it all from him in this match, and I don't want to get too carried away. Like, there's still every possibility that he's not in this first team and goes out on a loan somewhere. He's still young enough for that to be possible. But boy, if you're looking for some center back depth and a guy who can maybe play a little bit of Champions League football here and there, and then really bet himself into this team in this league, that was as impressive as a first impression as you're going to see from Vuskovic in that match.
Yeah, I think we saw exactly what we expected to see from him as he came in, which is somebody who's young and raw, has a ton of talent, or in the box, the opposition's box, is going to be very beneficial in set piece situations for Spurs. Absolutely a commanding physical presence. But, um, we played him in the middle of a three. That was extremely important because his biggest weakness is his athletic ability to turn and cover. And when he's going backwards toward his own goal, there's definitely holes in his game there. I saw a raw center back that I would love to keep around the first team and develop over the next year. But I saw a guy that you can bring on in a pinch when you need to drop to a three. And not only can he do a sound job defensively with the block, but can also be a legitimate threat going forward. His passing range, too, is something that I think he kind of teased a little bit. But if you look at his highlights, like he has the ability to kind of like, as the middle of that back three, kind of step forward and be the like a little bit more of a ball playing center back. So I don't know. We'll see, man. Like you said, Andrew, it's hard to take anything away from that performance that wasn't positive. So we'll see.
I don't think Vuskovic is necessarily as slow as we all talk about as fans. I think we have this we're looking through the glasses of the Ange Postecoglou system, in which if you weren't, a world class sprinter, you were going to struggle in the system, right? And I mean, some of the most talented, well versed footballers in the world, and I'm not talking about just like flair up top, but like total footballers. Think of Rodri, think of Modric. Like these guys they're not fast. Busquets was
No,
never
no, I
fast. And
maybe I
again,
misunderstood.
no. I'm not even coming at you at all. I'm just kind of finding a talking point out of what you said, right? That there has been all this conversation around Vuskovic maybe not being as quick as we all want him to be. But again, I think I'm just like checking fans into remembering that in the Thomas Frank system, you can probably be very effective without having a lightning pace.
No doubt. And my point was not about his speed. It was more in jiu-jitsu you'd say his hips are stupid. Right? His hips are dumb. There's a Brazilian phrase for it, but my Portuguese is pretty terrible. I'm taking Duolingo though, so we'll see. But what it means is it's mat time, right? It's game time. You need to know how a Premier League attacker is going to move at you so that you can make the right anticipatory step and move your hips in the right direction so you don't get left in the dust, making it look like you're a lot slower than you actually are. His hips are dumb. He'll get there. It's just a matter of time.
Well, no, that makes sense. And I also think it was really interesting to me that Romero and Danzo paired together for 45 minutes with Vuskovic and Van de Ven. That can be fitness, that can be a multitude of things, but I think Danzo is seen as a left-sided center back, in this Thomas Frank world, where Vuskovic is a right-sided center back, right? And then it sounds like Takai can play either side of the equation, which makes him even that much more of a good buyer, right? But I'm curious to see the extent of the decision behind pairing Vuskovic and Van de Ven together, because we talk about everything you're talking about. Mickey Van de Ven's obviously going to be the perfect person to partner with that type of profile, right? And then that begs the question, what's going on with Romero? Is why is he not pairing with who is clearly going to be one of our first choice center backs in Mickey Van de Ven every day of the week, right? And I'm not saying that's happening here, right? But I'm just saying there's a lot of questions.
Preseason game type of stuff.
Yeah,
too,
but there's just, I think, a lot of talking points you can pull out of the fact that he paired those center backs the way he did.
Well, and the pairings, I think, all across the board were pretty interesting, because I think what I was expecting from this first game was to see, something closer to what we think would be our starting 11 for that first half. And then, players who are kind of on the fringe for the second half. But I felt like Frank had more of a balance for each half, so that you would have these like less experienced players playing alongside the experienced ones, so that they could actually get something out of themselves. And the one thing I do kind of regret is that we didn't get to see Vuskovic and Divine play in the same half, since they had been out on loan at the same club and already have that like built-in chemistry. I feel like that would have been interesting to see, especially because I thought Divine had a pretty good first half. I think he, out of the young sort of number 10s, shown a little brighter than Jamie Donnelly did, which probably we would not have predicted going into this game.
Well, and the point that Scott made earlier about that too is that, Divine could very well translate into like a homegrown piece that would be really key for the squad. So that'll be an interesting one to watch as well as all the other kind of interesting little tidbits we're pointing out with Vuskovic and who knows else. Did you guys have any other talking points you wanted to get to from the game, Scott? I think you're up next. Did you have someone else you wanted to point out?
I actually think Mikey Moore looked really, really good yesterday. And I'm hoping that Thomas Frank is finally the one to just kind of, rip the cord and let that guy play some football this season and see what happens. It's the only way we're going to figure out if he's the real deal, right? So, and obviously Mateus Tell was not there. That factors into that left side of the attack, right? But I was really, really happy for Mikey Moore. I think he earned himself an opportunity to keep competing for significant minutes this year.
Right on. I got one more if I can throw it out. The interesting dynamic between, if you were able to piece our two goalkeepers together, they would be unstoppable, but separated, there's a real interesting dynamic between the two, because one of them is really, really good at a lot of different things and cannot stop shots as well as the other guy can. I was really blown away by Kinski in the first half of this match. I thought he just looked bright, was pinging the ball all over the place, really knows what he's doing with the ball at his feet. And I think that's all things that we knew. This is not new information to us. It's all things we saw during his appearances last season when he came into the team during Vicario's injury. And then Vicario kind of looking the opposite of composed in some moments, which we've also seen. And again, I'm always going to be accused of being a number one Vicario hater, which I will push back against. But I'm just pointing out that in this instance, they really do look like two guys that if you could mesh their talents together, they would be one super keeper. But unfortunately, we haven't developed the technology to do that yet. So we've got two different guys here. I don't think it's a real conversation. I think Vicario is the number one. I'm not saying that. But it was just an interesting dichotomy between the two things and between the two halves for me to watch the goalkeeper position look so different in the two different 45s.
Well, Thomas Frank is someone who, if you look at the stats from last year, his goalkeeper, I forget the guy's name, but they hoof it long. He did it almost as much, if not more, than anyone else in the league. And when you look at what Kinski brings to the table with the new goalkeeping coach, I think that we're going to see a lot of development from Kinski, specifically in the shot stopping ability. Like, everybody knew that Antonin Kinski was great with the ball at his feet. Everybody knew he could hoof it long. Everybody knew that he was composed. It literally is, he gets alligator arms. And with Vicario, it's the exact same thing in reverse, as you mentioned, which he is, when he doesn't have to think about it, he's a great shot stopper. Like, his instinctive saves are outstanding, but he gets in his own way a lot. And it's that indecision that we've seen on display, and is the reason why you can be 100% considered the biggest Vicario hater on this pod. But
Fine.
but
That's fine. I don't even think I'm that much of a hater, but I will take the role of biggest one on this pod for sure.
I think what Thomas Frank said, and we'll come on to his quotes in the press conference, but his biggest challenge is to maximize the potential that he has available to him on his team. And I think that there is a higher ceiling for Kinski to have his potential be maximized more than there is Vicario. 1, age; 2, general ability; and 3, just that the decision-making process is something that at 21, 22, you can shape a lot better than you can at 28. So we'll see.
Dude, honestly, though,
I do think. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up on what Todd said about obviously Kinski needing to work on his shot stopping. I do feel like we have seen a bit of growth in Vicario, in the sense that I notice him going for balls that he would not have gone for in his first couple of seasons with the club, because he even talked himself about how he recognizes that set piece situations, like making those captures, that's a real weakness for him that he needed to work on. And I still don't always feel confident when he's going up for a ball, but at least he's going for them now. So it's like a little bit of progress. So yeah, I do think there's potential for both of them to see some development. And I'm just choosing to see it as a positive that we have two, pretty good keepers who are good at different things and perhaps will work better for some games than others. It's good to have that kind of versatility within the goalkeeper ranks.
Yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing to watch for. And TC, what you say about Kinski's ceiling really hits home, because that is what I think that's what most excites me, is just that it's not hate on Vicario so much as I'm really excited to see what Kinski can become, because you can see the bones of something really, really good in there. It just needs to be built upon, and like you said, he's young enough where that can happen. So that is something that excites me. Do you guys want to get into Thomas Frank's press conference? I guess I didn't realize before Friday that he had not spoken to the media, and then spoke to the media before this first match, of course, against Reading. And to be honest, it just kind of went over my head at first. I was like, oh yeah, that is the first time that he's really sat down and answered questions from the media writ large. I'm not sure if there were any great takeaways, but I did pull a couple clips of it, and he spoke. This was he joked about. He had a lot of funnies, but they weren't met with like a ton of laughter. It was a little awkward at times, but he did talk about the challenge of managing Tottenham Hotspur, especially after so many managers in the past have been sacked.
I like to challenge myself. I've been that privileged. I've never been sacked before, so that's one of the reasons why I took the job. So I could get a little bit more risk into my daily life. I'm, coming to a big club. There's pressures. There's, we need to perform because it is we. It's me. It's the staff. It's the players. It's everyone, and we need to do that together. So no, I like the ambitions, and I'm everything I do, every decision I made so far, everything is for the long term. It's not about surviving one game or 1 year or 18 months or what is the average. No, it's for the long run.
Something you obviously like to hear. You want to hear a guy talking about a long-term project and goal, and he didn't use the word project per se, but that's kind of what we've all been talking about, is having a guy that can build something, and at least based on that response and his, kind of lighthearted nature about it, he got a few laughs there, but like he's taking this as seriously as one can, and I think that's all that I can ask for, really.
I mean, it got a laugh out of me, so I appreciate someone who could be a little self-deprecating. But I'll be honest, I in terms of my lifespan as a Tottenham fan, have become less and less interested in watching press conferences, just because I have found them to be a source of irritation mostly. And part of that was especially with Ange, I just did not connect with his prickly kind of conversational style. It just was not for me. So I don't know. I tend to be someone who just is I need the injury info for the week and I'm set. Everything else is just kind of extra. But I mean, he seems level-headed at least, which is a good thing.
He's affable, and he made the point in the press conference that this is the honeymoon period, right? We haven't played a game yet, so everybody's all happy, everybody's all smiles. We haven't played a game yet. Obviously, starting out the preseason, starting out your tenure, with a victory is great news. Especially given the way that he started in his last two positions, which were not great. I think he went 0-9 or 0-10 at Burnley at Brentford to get started. So that's always good times. But I think that his perspective on what can be and how to get there, I think is the thing that excites me the most. He talked about maximizing the potential of each individual player as his primary charge. He talked about the challenges that he's going to have to overcome. He put up with a lot of snarky bullshit questions from the media in that presser as well, and then I thought he handled them extremely well. I don't know, I don't have a lot of appetite, same Kaz, for kind of the shit-headed gotcha sports journalist that you get from the British football press a lot of the time. And I thought he did a really good job of navigating those waters. Now, I liked Ange's approach. It definitely resonated with, I think I was more his target demo, I guess. But it definitely resonated with me. I like Thomas Frank for a different reason. He gives me well-intentioned AP history teacher vibes, and I'm 100% with that. I'm on board for that. Yes, Mr. Frank, I'll absolutely do that extra credit assignment, right? Whereas Ange was like a leader of men. Ange was someone you run through a fucking brick wall for, as we clearly saw in Bilbao. Like Ange was someone that, like, you're ride or die whether you believe him or not, or whether you believe in his approach or not. Whereas Thomas Frank, I feel like, is one of those guys where, like, he can say all the right things he wants to in a press conference, but if you come out and you're, 4-12 in your first 16 matches at Tottenham Hotspur, like, it's not going to go well for you, right? Like, we're going to absolutely throw you to the wolves. And I don't think a guy with his disposition is going to last effectively with the knife at his throat, to be fair.
Well, who would?
To be fair. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are better suited for that in the managerial game than Thomas Frank, is my point. I don't think that he's ever, like, he's a legend at Burnley, and he left Brøndby before anything ever really came of that appointment. So when you look at that, you go, now you're coming to what we consider a Big Six squad. You're coming to a team where the expectations are high. You're literally coming off of a season where they just won a European trophy. Like, obviously, that's going to change the way that you do things. It is going to change the expectations of you. So we'll see. I think those lights are going to get really bright for Thomas Frank. And when they do, it'll be interesting to see how he responds.
There was a conversation in the group chat this morning. Dakota had mentioned he really likes Thomas Frank, and I didn't have a chance to jump in, but it got me thinking that I'm just at the point now where, as much as I like a manager, or I think they're going to do well or not going to do well, until it changes from top to bottom, it's really not going to matter who the manager is, right? And so that's just kind of where I'm at with this conversation. Press conferences, do managers, belief in them, all of that, right? I do think things are looking, they're progressing well in terms of what we're asking for as fans based on what we're seeing this summer. But all that to say, I do think, I look at Thomas Frank, and when you look at him finishing 19th at Brentford, having the 19th, I guess, 19th highest wage bill, you would say, right? But still finishing circa 10 most years, right? It's impressive. And I think if you look at his tactical flexibility coupled with his in-game management, because those are two very different things, right? It's having the tools and then being able to execute them. I think he does both of those things very well. And I really like the fact that he looks to be somebody who, I've talked about this a lot on the show, he's forming a tactical approach based on his personnel rather than trying to stuff personnel or make it work with the way that he wants to play football. I think that's really important for Tottenham Hotspur, especially at this point, with the point we're at with our squad, we would say, right? I think there's a lot of variability and flux in the football players we're deploying at the moment. So those three things make me think that Thomas Frank can do really well at Spurs. And I'm not calling for like a Premier League title this season or anything like that, but I think that if things are done correctly, I think Thomas Frank could be very successful because of those three things. And I know we're talking about a press conference, but when I pair that up with the fact that he is coming in, as you all have said, very level-headed and very, very well spoken, and he's likable, but not in like in a way that concerns me, right? That he's going to be like pushed over by the board or anything like that. He looks like just a likable, nice guy who will also stand his ground and believes in his ways, and that excites me as well.
Well, and not only that, but you mentioned the adaptability. That was the one thing that folks were calling out for ad nauseum last year, is the lack of adaptability. And I think there's a certain, I'm going to use a word that I think is, I think I'm approximately 15 years too old to use here, but I'm going to do it anyway. And anyone who wants to laugh at any Gen Zer who wants to laugh at me is fine, but he doesn't have the same aura that other managers do. Like he carries himself very under the radar. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but he's not.
It's very Danish, bro. It's very Danish.
It is. It's very stereotypically Danish, and it's very not what we've had in recent years, which I think is a good thing to an extent. But I think it's going to take people a moment to adjust. And like TC, you were talking about like the rah-rahness of it. I've got one more clip here I want to play where he talks about his principles, and this is the only part of this press conference that really got me hyped.
I'm very, very clear in all the principles I have in, how can I say, every phase of the game. What I will like to see from the team and the players is I want us to be brave, I want us to be very aggressive, and I want to attack. And I think brave is absolutely linked in dare to do, dares to do. And if you're not brave, it's very, very difficult to achieve anything. And I think it's very important that we take risk, because if you don't take risk, you also take risk. So that brave to dare to do, I think, is crucial. I think the aggressivity, that's difficult. Crucial also if you want to win something or achieve something, because you're not aggressive in duels on off the ball is difficult. It's a very competitive game, and of course need to attack.
He's self-deprecating even. We even heard him, and I didn't pull this clip because I didn't want to, frankly, but we even heard him talking about the fact that this club is going to lose matches. Like he was just blunt about this is not going to be a team that doesn't lose a match. He says no team has ever done that. And then he remembers, oh yeah, one team did go through a season and not lose a match, but he probably shouldn't have brought them up. Like he knows, he gets it. Like he did bring them up, and then he immediately called himself out on it. It was like, well, that was a mistake. There's my first mistake. Like he knows what's going on. He gets it. He just does it in a way that's very, even that little bit, like him hitting the table as he was hitting his points. Like it was even still very underhanded, but I kind of dig it. This is a guy who knows what he's after and is just going to go do it.
Well, you had a great relationship with your AP history teacher, so I completely understand your point. I mean, dude, I don't know that it could get more apt. The guy looks like Woody from Toy Story all growing up in a trackie. Like it's tough. So what you're hoping for is that energy is infectious. What you're hoping for is that the rest of the organization gets behind the idea of our approach is to maximize the opportunity for each one of us to be great. And if you can do that, you can overcome his Michael Scottness.
I don't even know that it's Michael Scottness, but I hear you. And by the way, if you think I was an AP student, you got another thing coming, my friend, because that is far from the truth. Anything else you guys want to take away from this guy? I mean, so I'm looking forward to hearing more. I know you guys don't love the press conference stuff all the time, but I think it's interesting to hear the insights from this guy who's the face of the club now and leading things, and we don't even really know all that much so far.
Well, I did like that phrase about, if you don't take risk, you're still taking a risk, because, obviously we don't want to become a Burnley or, well, maybe like old Burnley, but, a team that's going to sit back and defend. Like, we still want to be Tottenham. And I think he gets that there has to be some balance to it in a way that perhaps none of our previous few managers fully understood. So again, just the level-headedness. I feel like he's got a good head on his shoulders. So we should, at the very least, we should be okay.
Of course. And that line you brought up, that sounded more Ange coded than anything else. Like that is kind of, he gets that this is not a club that wants to play defensively. They want to be attacking, and the fact that he brings up to dares to do in all of that he knows what he's doing. Like he knows how to tug at the heartstrings and how to ingratiate himself with the club that he's now taken charge of. So it's all hands on deck. In terms of the transfer business, guys, speaking of all hands on deck, we've got more and more Morgan Gibbs White drama. His future still up in the air. although The Athletic reports that he is supposed to be traveling with Nottingham Forest to Portugal for preseason training this week, which could further delay any potential move to Spurs, obviously. I know there's some reports out there that Tottenham are pivoting, should be pivoting soon away from this, but I'm not sure that this one is going to go away. This is probably just going to be strung out across the window. What are we thinking? Let's start with you, Scott, because you are our transfer guru.
The first thing I'll say is it's frustrating that we finally activated a release clause and just bought the player. All of Twitter has been screaming for a decade, just fucking pay the money and buy the player. We finally do it, and this happens, right? So it's very Tottenham in that sense, but I think it's going to get done. I think the other names that we're hearing and talking about maybe today, right, are just to get Nottingham Forest to start moving on this. I think if from all accounts, Ola Aina, his teammate, came out and said he's being very professional about it, right? But it's clear that it is happening. Something is happening, right? And so I suspect it gets to a point where Morgan Gibbs-White wants to leave and Nottingham Forest knows they just need to take their agreed upon release clause for him and stop all of this nonsense. But again, it's unfortunate in the sense that it hasn't already happened, and we're going to end up a week out from the season signing him probably at this point.
Well, and I think it was Alistair Gold who was pointing out that not a similar situation, but the timing of Dominic Solanke's transfer was also late in the preseason after he had already been off on tour with Bournemouth, and he integrated just fine. So, it's not ideal, but it'll be okay. If this is the player that we really want, we just need to get it done, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this would be way different if it wasn't a Premier League proven player who would be able, like Solanke would.
You're willing to take risks on those players because of the value they already have, right?
Bingo. Yeah, I think that's right. In terms of
the other thing is,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, dude. The other thing is that he's only going to Portugal for preseason training. So it's like a 3-hour flight or whatever. It's not like he's going to America or Korea. So, I'm with Scott. I think it gets done. I think it drags out. But I think that I think it's ultimately going to come down to the fact that we paid the release clause, the exact number of the release clause, and when this actually gets shaken out, whether it goes to, I don't know who makes these decisions, whether it's the FA or exactly who pulls the trigger, the league in some capacity. Like when they rule on it, they're going to rule in our favor and it's going to go through. It's just the Sorry. I was just going to say that the clown nose over at Nottingham Forest is just trying to make it difficult. And I don't know why. Maybe because he sucks, but I don't know if there's a personal Tottenham vendetta. It could be because he's Greek and Ange is Greek and we kind of showed Ange the door. I don't know, dude. I'm literally throwing darts at the wall right here just to stir stuff up because I don't know what this guy's fucking problem is, Andrew. So I mean, we can giggle about it all we want to, but it's just like, hey, dude, we paid the fucking money. I don't really know what you think. Like, you don't get to say there's no release clause in Morgan Gibbs-White's contract when there's clearly a release clause in the contract, and we offered to pay that money. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think what's happening.
Where were you going, Scott?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know their owner, so I'm not going to comment on his character, the type of person he is, right? But I will say that I believe the situation. And what's actually happening is a release clause was activated. We did not inform Nottingham Forest that we were going to be talking about personal terms with the player we had paid the release clause for, right? Their owner's coming out and saying, like, you didn't have our permission to approach the player. But what he doesn't understand is that in England, when a release clause is paid, you don't have to have permission to talk to that player, right? And so I really think that's all that's happening right now. As you said, Todd, the Premier League will, I guess, come to the conclusion that what we did was perfectly fine because of that right there, and it will be all over and done with. So I don't think their owner's making. I think their owner thinks that there's something valid in the way that he's thinking, and he's going to find out that it's not. So I don't know. We'll see.
Fair enough. In other more minor transfer news, we see Josh Keeley sold to Luton Town. Moving on, I guess, from the goalkeeper there, and then Alfie Dorrington going back to Aberdeen for a second straight loan. He joined them last season and didn't really pick things up until like the final, I don't know, 5 to 10 games, and was actually in their team. So he's going to go back there
Did he win a cup?
Continue his
He
development.
won a cup with them.
Yeah, won the cup,
big deal.
But hadn't ingratiated himself until like those final couple of games, and once he did, it really did start to take off. So yes,
he had some injuries when he first got up there, and then they had a shift in their defensive formation leading into the latter half of the season. And once they did, Dorrington got more minutes, and he really showed out. So was excited for him. I'm sad to see Josh Keeley move on. We do have, I thought initially there was going to be a buyback clause in there, but apparently not. Apparently we just have a sell-on clause. I really like Josh Keeley. I mean, 16 clean sheets last year is nothing to sniff at, or 19 or whatever it happened to be. I think it was 16 clean sheets in League One for Josh Keeley. Certainly nothing to sniff at, but the biggest thing working in his favor is, for whatever reason, like he doesn't count as club trained. So it's like, regardless, he's fourth choice, and he can't get stuck on a European roster like Brandon Austin can, because he's not club trained. So it's way better to let him go, and then if he turns into the guy that I think he might have I think he's a Premier League player. It could be at more of a Southampton than a Crystal Palace, for example. But I think he's a Premier League player. If he actually comes to that level, we may entertain bringing him back. But I don't. Again, for the reasons I've already stated, I think it was a better time for us to just kind of let him go and do his thing. The interesting part is that transfer is complete. And don't we play Luton Town in a friendly next week? It'd be interesting to see how much game time we get.
We do, yes. That is Spurs' next match on Saturday. They travel to Luton Town for a preseason friendly. So yeah, maybe they'll be going up against Josh Keeley. Who could say? Anything else on the transfer front we need to hit?
Yes.
Yes, there are.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I think the biggest thing, at least there's multiple polls on the internet, and I absolutely agree, having watched it with my own eyes, that our biggest hole is and remains a 6, like a true proper number 6. I've called for my pie in the sky hopes that we bring in Adam Morton and somehow find 100 million pounds in the couch at Hotspur Way and see if we can hand that over to Crystal Palace. Unfortunately, I think it's way more likely that we bring in somebody along the lines of like a Joao Paulinho, somebody who is Premier League proven, spent the last little bit over in Germany. Kaz, I'm very interested as to your perspective on this, having watched him more closely than I. But I remember he was a terror when he was at Fulham. And I think I saw just this morning that we can get him for under 20 million, which would not be a bad thing. I also think that bringing in Wisa from Brentford is still absolutely on our agenda to help solidify that front line. It's hard to speak about the outgoings. I've heard everything from Richie leaving to Sonny leaving when we get back from Korea to a whole bunch of other folks being speculated, Basuma to Italy and all these different things. So we'll see on the outgoings, but I think from an incoming standpoint, the next one likely through the door is probably a 6.
Scott,
yeah,
you got
the other interesting thing that we're seeing a lot is at the center back position. Ilya Arbani, I'm not saying that. I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but he plays for oh my goodness, Bournemouth. Thank you. And he's a talent, 21-year-old. It's interesting that we're linked with him. I think PSG is also very interested, and it's like a $60 million number that's being reported there. And then there was a Crystal Palace center back whose name is now escaping me, and I didn't write down that were Maxime Lacroix, thank you, from Crystal Palace, that we're also reportedly very interested in. So these are both Premier League proven younger players, right? I don't know if we want to read the tea leaves on us being aggressively pursuing a center back at the moment, right? But we could if we wanted to here at the Tottenham Depot. And then again, I do have to agree with Todd that a 6 is really important for us. And unfortunately, it sounds like Warden's on his way to Liverpool, which is just maddening in a few different degrees, right? They're going to run the world if we don't keep Liverpool in check at this point after the summer they're having. But sounds like they're in for Warden, and I really don't think I can come up with another name other than Paulinho. Joao Paulinho, not only for links themselves, but just 6s in general across the globe that could potentially be available this summer. He might be the only one. So
Douglas Luiz.
That's a really good shout, actually, and it sounds like Juventus is ready to part ways with him. So either one has performed in the Premier League. I think João Paulinho is a little bit more of a talent at Fulham than Douglas Luiz at Villa, but I think they'd both be good signings.
Yeah,
Fair
it
enough.
is notable that we're all just forgetting about Polinia's time at Bayern because it has not gone well.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if this is just another situation of Bayern breaking a player's spirit, which I have seen many times over the past few seasons. That's totally possible. And he could thrive better if he comes back to the Premier League. I don't know. But if it was me, I would not go in for him personally.
What would you do to solve the 6? Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that, and that's probably one of the reasons why we're going to be able to get him for under 20 million, is because it hasn't gone very well at Bayern. But what, like, if we don't go that route, where do you find yourself on the 6 front?
Well, I am actually going to contradict myself because I'm sitting here thinking, what is the alternative? And the likely alternative is that Basuma stays, and I'm over him. So come on down, Joe. Welcome to Tottenham.
I mean,
That's
if you can get
called
Luiz and
that's
Paulinho,
called the lesser of two evils, is what that's called.
Exactly.
if you can get both of those guys, Luiz and Paulinho, and move Basuma on, I think you've had quite a win as well in the market. That is maybe too much of an abrupt change, right? Not a secession plan, but I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I'm just curious where Burval is going to get his minutes this year. Who is that guy as a midfielder? I don't know.
That's a really good question, and we were kind of talking off there that we're so aggressively linked to like 8-10 hybrid profiles right now in Gibbs White, and then now it's coming out that Javi Simons is what I would call the smoke screen to Morgan Gibbs White, right? But both of them are those 8-10 hybrids. Either he doesn't trust Sarr as much as we would like him to at that position, or he sees Bergvall as a 6, because Bergvall can do that really well, in my opinion. I think Bergvall could step into that 8-10 role and start a lot of matches this year. So maybe you're onto something, Todd. Maybe he sees Bergvall as more of a 6 in this system, and we're not going to know for a while, obviously, because Bergvall, what is he out for? Oh, he did. I know he played yesterday. What am I talking about?
No, he's back, but there are still a few other players that we aren't even considering yet, like Kulusevski, and who knows what role in a midfield, if at all, he's going to play too, because you're bringing out all these wingers, and that does that push him back further into the midfield? Who knows? That's going to be an interesting one to watch as well.
Another guy that I'm interested to see how he fits into this Thomas Frank system, because of the different kind of requirements of the position, is Dragusin. Because, I mean, we've often bemoaned his passing and his lack of ability on the ball, but all of us, to a person on this pod, has noted his excellent ability to play with his feet on the 6-yard box, with his heels on the 6-yard box. So I don't know if there's a place for him in a Thomas Frank system, especially if we're playing a 3. We'll see.
And Archie Gray, Oslo, we haven't talked about him at all. And, he didn't play in the friendly, obviously, so we didn't really get to see where Frank is going to employ him. But I don't know. I kind of think I would be interested to see him as a backup to Porro right now, but he could get minutes at the 6. Who knows?
I will say about Gray, he was one that Thomas Frank actually singled out as a player that he coveted at Brentford, and is pleased to be now, now his coach. So that big ups for Archie Gray from the manager in his first press conference. Would lead me to believe he's going to find a spot somewhere, because I think Thomas Frank really likes Archie Gray. So that is something that's important to look for as well. We'll keep track of all these transfers and what's going on. Obviously, still a lot of preseason to get through. In terms of firing up the preseason, Caroline, we're doing that with Spurs women. It's obviously a later season, so things are slowly ramping up. But since we last talked to you, because you were not able to make the pod last week, they've hired a manager in Martin Ho, and I know you guys are going to do this on N17 Women this week, recording this week. So I don't want you to give everything away, but can you give us a little bit of a preview of what you've learned about Martin Ho in the last handful of weeks since he's joined?
Well, he did kind of come out of left field. There was absolutely no rumors about him whatsoever before he was appointed. So that was kind of, I guess, a fun surprise. But as a result, I really didn't know much about him. But from hearing, from Manchester United fans, they thought really highly of him when he was an assistant there. And in fact, a lot of them basically implied that when he left, and it was just, Mark Skinner, that's when things started to kind of go awry for them, tactically at least. They're like the luckiest team in the world, which I won't get into it, but whatever. Um, I do think the fact that he was so successful in his, first season with Brann in the Champions League, getting them to, I think it was the quarterfinal.
Yes.
That bodes well because obviously Tottenham Spurs women, we are not there yet, but we would like to one day be in a position where we're, competing to qualify for the Champions League and, hopefully making a name for ourselves in that competition. So the fact that he already has the experience is good. And same thing goes for press conferences on the women's side. Like, I'm really not super engaged with them, but from the few clips that I saw, he speaks well. I think his principles seem sound. He seems pretty convinced that the club is taking the women's team seriously. That remains to be seen. I am skeptical, but at least if he feels bought into the project, that's a good thing. So yeah, we'll see what happens. No word on preseason games yet, like whatsoever. And I'm assuming that it'll probably be the same situation where we don't actually get to watch them. So
yeah, a lot of them seem to be the closed door variety.
Yes, so we'll just be grasping at straws, trying to figure out things like what formation we'll be playing. Like where are players playing on the pitch. So it's going to be a lot of unknowns until the season actually starts, I think.
Yeah, we do actually get this week. We will learn about the fixtures for the WSL. Those are being released on Friday, I believe it is, and so we'll get to learn those. Season doesn't start until the weekend of September 6th and 7th, so still quite well over a month before that season kicks off. But we'll at least get to find out what the fixtures are later this week and be able to dive into those next week. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and I should have brought this up in our pre-show meeting. This is very probably minor, but I think maybe potentially in terms of being able to watch games, the FA Player is just going away. We got everyone who is registered for the FA Player over the years got an email last week that the FA Player will no longer exist after I think it's the end of August or something like that. So hopefully those, FA Cup matches and other, I think there were even some League Cup matches that were on the FA Player over the years. Hopefully those are going to be put out on YouTube, kind of like the WSL has kind of shifted everything to YouTube, which has worked because the games are easily accessible and free and all of those things. But if the FA Player is going away, what does that mean for some of the other competitions? I don't know, and I haven't heard anything. So that'll certainly be another interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, and I think we're going to need to see Spurs picking up the slack in terms of actually utilizing the Spurs Play platform for some of those cup games. Because even when the FA Player was still being used for a lot of things, there would be like entire rounds of the cup that just didn't get televised. The FA would pick like one fixture from the entire round. And if your team was not in that fixture, then you were out of luck. So I think that's something that honestly, not just Spurs, who have the capability to broadcast, we know, but, the FA, well, really the new company, they need to take it more seriously, the issue of like accessibility to the cup games, because the demand is obviously there. Like every time it's cup weekend, I hear complaints from people like, where are the games? Why can't we watch them? And they're living in the past. Clearly, people want to watch these games. So hopefully there's going to be a solution. I'm not sad to see the FA Player go because it was not really the best platform.
It's a garbage product.
Yeah. So,
really
sayonara, but hopefully something better is coming.
Yeah, I'm hoping. As you all know, I did not watch a lot of football over the summer. I broke that this week, but I didn't break it to watch Spurs against Reading in the preseason. I mean, I did watch that game, but that was not what I broke it to. I sat down this week and watched all 4 of the Euro quarterfinals, and they all banged. If you missed the quarterfinals in the Euros Women tournament this week, it was remarkable. Like all 4 games just absolutely slapped. Even the Spain-Switzerland game, which ended up being 2-0, like those 2 goals didn't come till late, and the Swiss were in that match, especially in the first half. Like that was a plucky game. Caroline, I know you have like the German angst side of this to that you had to get through. But how did you take in these 4 matches? Because they were all really good. Like I was delighted to have watched them.
Well, I only watched like maybe 2.5 of the quarterfinals. I caught like the second half of the Italy game, which was the best half, so that was fun. But otherwise, the only 2 that I watched in full were the England-Sweden game, the worst penalties known to humanity.
I was going to talk about penalties too, because my goodness.
And then of course,
not just in that game, but everywhere.
The whole tournament.
Across the tournament, penalties are just not going well.
I don't know if these penalty spots are being sabotaged or what is going on, but no one can shoot a penalty all of a sudden. It's bizarre, but also not unprecedented. Like I feel like people have been really negative about it, and I think we can all remember the last Men's World Cup. Some of those penalty shootouts were utter trash as well. But yeah, I obviously watched the Germany game yesterday, and that was
went a little better in that one, at least.
They were better penalties, yes, but the game as a whole was just like a roller coaster of stress and anger at Hendrick, because I don't know how she had the audacity to complain about her red card when that was like the most blatant hair pull we've ever seen. Like, if you weren't grabbing for her hair, what were you grabbing, ma'am? I don't understand the protest.
By the way, that's why I choose to go bald. I don't want my hair pulled. That's
strategic move, yes.
And that's the only reason.
But
you're more of a beard pull guy. I got you. Shout to AKB in that Germany match, a 2-time cancer survivor. Big shout.
That diving save on what would have been an
so sick
off the head. I've watched it from every single angle, and if you have not seen it, go look it up. It's remarkable, and she was obviously really shaken up after it, coming down. It looked like on her shoulder, just laying out. It was honestly, it was like Van de Ven-esque from the final.
Van de Ven.
Like it was that kind of desperation. It was right on the line, and that thing was that match. I can't imagine Caroline having actually been pulling for one of those teams, because that match was so up and down, and there was so much going on in it. And
and to use the word that you used earlier, I feel like AKB, her aura is the only one that comes close to Alyssa Nair in terms of penalty shootouts. Like, I felt very confident that once it got to the shootout, we could win. But everything up until then was just like, I was a nervous wreck, because, you could just see the German players were completely running on fumes. And it doesn't really bode well for the semifinal either, because we've got suspensions, we've got injuries. It's not going to be pretty.
We got to
play Spain. Yeah. But like Scott, I'm trying to manifest an Italy-Germany final. I feel like that's the final that the world deserves. Because Spain and England, their time is over. Let's make that end.
We shall see. Of course, semis this week: Italy, England on Tuesday, I believe it is, and then Germany, Spain on Wednesday, with the final set for next Sunday. Should be fun to watch. We will be back with you next week as well. That's going to do it for this edition of The Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. For Caroline, who can be found at CG Stefko, Todd is at TC_Show, Scott is at Scott G Bird, and you can follow me at Aesthetica. Follow us at Tottenham Depot. Till next week, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.